Ever since I was a kid, I've loved Spider-Man. I loved pretty much everything that included him, and as I got older, I started to play some of his many games. It was then that the dream of many young kids took over me. I wanted to be Spider-Man, and with the rise of virtual reality, that dream has become more and more attainable. But no dream shall be fulfilled by a subpar product. After searching far and wide, I found 3 contenders in making my childhood dream a reality. Join me as we find the best Spider-Man VR game, once and for all. Far From Home VR, the Unbreakable Gumball, and the Spider-Lair. 3 games, all with their strengths and weaknesses, and all competing for the title of the best. Together, we will analyse each of these 3 games, name one of them the best, and fulfill the childhood dreams of hundreds of millions. This is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR game. Let us start where my hunt began. The year was 2020. I had just bought my brand new Oculus Quest. It looked like this. The dream of becoming Spider-Man was very much alive, and so I immediately began to search for games. Now, of course, this was back in the day where the Quest was still pretty new in the VR space, and so there was no official game on the store that could really make me Spider-Man. But I did find something. The Spider-Man WebVR game. WebVR. Get it? Like Spider-Man's webs.
Shut up. Get out.
This one's mildly cool because it's literally played over the internet, meaning you could probably play it on this thing, but other than that, it's pretty average. Your webs are kind of funky, and the momentum is not right at all. I guess it's fun if you enjoy pain, and I'm an SAO fan, so you can probably imagine the time I had with it. On the 21st of April, and after about 6 months of saving, I bought my brand new PC. Immediately I was excited as to the possibilities that this PC could bring about. One of those possibilities was PC VR. I went to the Oculus store for some reason and typed in Spider-Man. To my surprise, I actually found more than one game bearing the name, one tie-in game for Homecoming and for Far From Home. I read up on the reviews for both, and found that the Homecoming experience was barely a game, more of just a demo that teases you with being a game. Upon checking the reviews for the Far From Home experience, I found the consensus was actually pretty positive. People were speaking about how the game had such potential, and it made them excited for a AAA VR Spider-Man game. And after a few hours of playtime, I can certainly agree. But notice the makes me excited part. This little experience is far from perfect. Its world is ugly as hell, my arms are very not right, and the controls are absolutely rage-inducing. This probably shouldn't have come as too much of a surprise, considering that the developers of this game seem to have a track record of making shoddy VR games. But the gameplay, despite its god-awful controls, is actually pretty fun. You can crawl on walls, jump ridiculously high, shoot webs, and do basically whatever a spider can. I hate myself. Where the game begins to slip, however, is in the titular web-swinging mechanic. The main problem here is that the web swinging doesn't work as it should. Everyone knows that Spider-Man swings, right? Well, not in this game. Instead, your webs function more like a grappling hook that tether and pull you towards the thing you shoot them at. Instead of making deep arcs of my webs attached to skyscrapers, I end up pulling myself along the buildings. When you do manage to swing, it's slow and doesn't quite catch the exciting momentum that we see depicted in Spidey media. The main reason for this change is that sometimes when VR games using a large IP are made, they have to be altered to be more comfortable for VR users that might not have the same experience someone like me has. Now, don't get me wrong, this is great for the kinds of people that jump into their TVs playing Richie's Plank experience. Not so great for those of us who have clocked hundreds, if not thousands of hours into our headsets, and so look for a little bit more of an exciting experience. With this knowledge, it's pretty easy to spot in other games. The Valve devs have openly talked about how they designed Half-Life Alyx to accommodate all kinds of VR users, but the difference is they made that game in a way that makes it fun for experienced players too, with a variety of different comfort options. But since Far From Home VR doesn't really give you the option to enable realistic swinging, it kind of alienates players like me. those who look for more thrilling experiences in their games. Because after you've poured as much time into VR as I have and many others have, the novelty of it just isn't enough. It's just, web swinging is the icon that either makes it or breaks it for a Spider-Man game. I'm sure you know of the discussion around Spidey swinging in his flat games and the high standard that it's held to. So why should this be any different? It became evident that Far From Home VR wasn't the game for me, so I resumed my search and I ended up finding 2 more games that address the issues I had with it. One random afternoon, I don't know how long ago, I became interested in VR racing games. Still not knowing what was wrong with me, I searched the Oculus store for games in the genre. It was there that I found Swinger Man, a game that I took one look at, specifically the price tag attached to it, and said, "That's outrageous!" Not wanting to give Facebook any more money than I already had, I took to Steam, and I found the game was listed there at the same price as it was on the Oculus store. I once again checked the reviews. One reviewer was talking about how a game called the Unbreakable Gumball didn't support their Valve Index yet, and so they took to this game to quote-unquote scratch the same itch. Immediately I was intrigued. Could I be on the cusp of discovering yet another Spider-Man VR game? Setting aside Swinger Man for a moment, I quickly punched the name into the search bar, and found a listing under the same name. Before downloading the demo, I took a read through the store page. The Unbreakable Gumball is a slick superhero simulator with a comic book inspired art style. Equipped with your gum lines, you can swing around the city just like the famous webhead. I'll openly admit, Gumball was the game that I slept on the most. I originally played it months ago in preparation for this video, and initially I wasn't too keen on it. I found the art style distracting and some of the physics and gameplay unsatisfactory. But I'm glad to say that after jumping back into the game, it's grown on me like nothing ever has before. First things first, this game does not specifically attempt to emulate all of Spider-Man's abilities, thus there is no wall crawling here. However, the game completely and utterly makes up for it in its other mechanics. The web swinging is absolutely amazing. Unlike Far From Home VR, the webs actually work as they should, a momentum-based, pendulum-like simulation. Although at first it may feel like you have a lack of control, once you get used to it, it's a truly fulfilling feeling. Once you know how to do what you want to do, no other game on this list will give you a sense of achievement that even matches what Gumball gives you. And once you do get there, you flow through this cel-shaded cyberpunk metropolis like water. It's honestly remarkable. Not only do you swing at breakneck speeds, but you can also control your trajectory via your webs, and not something overly immersion breaking like a thumbstick. In the event you do slam your face into a building, you can quickly use your jump ability to get back into things, or use your superhero strength to yank yourself in the direction you want to go. You can even hold the trigger while you have a web out to repel yourself towards it. This comes in extremely handy. As overset as this is when it comes to video games, this game makes me feel like Spider-Man. I have his strength, speed, and intellect, and I'm entirely in control. There are so many moments where you think you're going to hit the ground but somehow shoot out a web that saves your life. It's absolutely exhilarating, and I don't think words can even properly describe it. But I'm not even finished yet. This game has something that all the other games on this list don't have. Something that increases the Spider-Man-ness drastically. This game has true Spider-Man combat. The game contains these dummies that act as enemies and are placed around the environment. Although they don't actively try to kill you, using your gum lines to fight them is some of the most fun I've ever had in VR. With the systems in place, the ways you can dispatch these enemies are probably endless. Want to web an enemy, throw them in the air, then slam them back into the ground? You can do that. Want to soar into the air, web the ground, and pile drive an enemy into the pavement? You can do that too. Want to pull an enemy towards you, deck them in the jaw, then launch them in the air? You can do it. You can even shoot web shots, or gumballs as they're referred to in this game, and take your enemies out that way. You can also charge up a super jump that can give you the momentum needed to start swinging, or to just drop kick an enemy, I guess. And all of this insane gameplay takes place in the beautifully presented city of Elysia. No, not that Elysia. This Elysia. Bored of the city, you can literally go underneath it, and there's a completely different environment to swing around in. I didn't even realize this was here until a day before recording this. And to top all of this off, the soundtrack absolutely kicks spider ass. I honestly don't think I can overstate how much I love this game. The mechanics, the music, the graphics, they all come together and make me feel more like Spider-Man than any other game on this list. Even if when I look down at my hands I see sci-fi gauntlets. As far as I'm concerned, the Unbreakable Gumball is the best Spider-Man VR game. But there's actually more. Remember that game whose reviews informed me of Gumball's existence? Yeah, Swinger Man, that one. I ended up going back onto the Steam store and buying the game after initially not liking Gumball the first time I played it. And, Swinger Man is garbage.
Crap, mega crap.
Swinger Man is a finicky experience that literally says it's not fun on the Steam store page. I'm not joking, that's actually what it says. It has this strange method of controlling your trajectory based upon the position of your hand in relation to the contact point of your web. Holy crap, that was a long sentence. On paper it sounds okay, but when you play it, it's awful. On top of that, for some strange reason you can't just move around normally with a joystick. You physically can't. And finally, I'm not sure if it's just because I play it via Oculus Link with a USB 2.0 cable, but the game performs like a keynote presentation 90% of the time. It has to be bad optimization because I literally played Half-Life Alyx all the way through with the exact same cable and saw next to no issues. Don't waste your money on this. Gumball is literally free and it provides an infinitely better experience. So in the end I did waste my money, but at least it didn't go towards Facebook and hence world domination, right? VRChat, everyone's favourite VR social platform that has all but been ruined by young children. Clearly one wasn't enough. I've never really spent that much time in VRChat. As an introverted guy, it all seems very intimidating to me, but even though I never really spent that much time in the game itself, I knew all about its insane versatility when it comes to world building. Nowhere is that more exemplary than in the Spider-Lair. Go web! Fly. The Spider-Lair is a VRChat world that attempts to emulate the web-swinging experience in both VR and in flat screen. The world also contains a large variety of costumes that you can wear. 2099, Miles Morales, whatever the hell this is. If you want it, it's probably there, except for the best suit, aka the TASM 2 suit, which isn't there but is coming soon, at least at the time of recording this. In terms of gameplay, the Spider-Lair has a leg up on the second game in this video, as it also shows off realistic swinging physics. Unlike Gumball, the world also allows you to wall crawl and to launch yourself in the direction you're facing. The ability itself is quite versatile and could even be used as another form of traversal all by itself. And the city itself actually looks quite good. It's definitely a step above Far From Home VR and a great substitute if you're not into the art style of Gumball. All in all, the fact that this is achieved in a VRChat world is utterly incredible, and another great thing is that it's playable on the Quest, which not all of its competitors are. But where the experience falls short for me is how it makes me feel. You probably recall me saying that Gumball makes me really feel like Spider-Man, and the way this game makes me feel is just like a regular dude in a costume. Take for example flinging myself with my webs. In Gumball, if I want to start swinging, all I need to do is web a building and then pull on my webs to launch myself in the air, and off I go. If I want to start swinging in the Spider-Lair, I either have to climb up a tall building and jump off, slowly gain momentum through jumping and webbing up a building, or hitting one of these launch pads. All this does is make me feel weak. I feel like Spider-Man would have the strength to fling himself upward using his webs, but this is lacking from the Spider-Lair. One thing I've noticed is that your webs in the Spider-Lair are kind of elastic and bouncy, whereas in Gumball, the webs are taut and don't really vary in size. This might be for some people, but personally it's just not for me. But let's look at more positives that the Spider-Lair has. It's the only game in this video that is multiplayer, meaning you can jump in and play with friends. I can only imagine the amount of fun that would be. This experience also has a lot more world-based interaction as well. There's a train, which is sure to bring some Raimi fans to life, and a helicopter that when webbed will send you absolutely flying. And as I said, this experience is playable on the Quest and for free, which enables dozens more people to fulfill their dreams as I have. I mean, if you're on Quest, your only other option is this. I think I know which one I prefer. The last time I made a video like this, that is, comparing things to find the best of something, was the VR Guns video, my first ever mini-doc. In the video, I strictly identified Pavlov as my favourite VR shooter for a couple different reasons. However, back then it was easy to identify which one I liked the most, because guns are a sort of arbitrary thing that don't really hold any sort of emotional weight. What I'm trying to say here is that I like all of these games. That's not only because they all offer good gameplay in some way, but because they're all trying to encapsulate the feeling of being a character that has been a role model to me for so many years. And when you truly love something, I don't think it really matters what form that something appears in. Now, I'm sure any Spider-Man fan knows of the arguing and the vitriol among the fandom about the best live-action iteration of the character. Personally, I'm one of few people whose favourite Spider-Man is Andrew. I'm sure nostalgia has something to do with it, given that the TASM films were coming out when I was young, but I do love Toby and Tom as well. But what's important here is it doesn't matter which actor you prefer, or which franchise is your favourite. The only thing that matters is that we all love Spider-Man. In the end, there is no definitive best Spider-Man VR game, other than the game that you take, enjoy, and call your own. And so it doesn't matter which game you prefer. It doesn't matter if you love Far From Home VR, the Spider-Lair, or Gumball. They're all great games that we play because we want to be like our heroes, and that is something that should never ever be ignored. I think when we were kids, we all thought that we'd need web shooters and spider powers to have what it takes, but I realize now that we can be Spider-Man whenever we want. Because whatever comes our way, whatever battle we have raging inside of us, we always have a choice. Peter Parker taught me that. He chooses to be the best of himself. It's the choices who make us who we are, and we can always choose to do what's right. And if you can do that, you don't need a VR headset to be Spider-Man. You don't need some perfect feature-packed game to feel like him. If you can do that, you are Spider-Man. Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. After the blazing success of the first video, and after me looking upon the dozens more games you guys told me about, I knew the hunt had to continue. So I hope you're ready, because our childhood dreams are about to get a lot bigger. Combat was something almost unseen in the last video, but no Spider-Man is truly complete without fighting against evil. Superfly, Swarm, and the Silkworm. 3 games that pit you against the most daring of foes in action-packed Spider-Man combat. We know how to move like Spider-Man. We know how to be like Spider-Man. But what we don't know is how to fight like him. The answer may lie within these 3 games, but it could also lie somewhere unexpected, inside each and every single one of us. The only way we can find out is by stepping forth. The only question that remains is, are you ready? This is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR game. My new journey began where the old one left off. After publishing the first video, and even for some time before that, I received dozens of comments telling me to check out a bunch of different games. In fact, all the games in this video were suggested to me in the comments, so thanks for that. Among all the people telling me to play little games on SideQuest, or a mod for Boneworks, let me just remind you that this is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR game, not the best Spider-Man VR mod. And if I even tried running Boneworks on my system, it'd probably explode. Among all the people telling me to play Boneworks, there are a couple standout suggestions. One of them was a game called Superfly. Since a couple people had recommended it to me, I decided to take a look into it. Going back into the Steam store for the first time in like a month, I jotted the name into the search bar. Looking through all the stuff on the store page, it began to look very enticing. Combined with the very positive reviews, I was ready to get the game. Then I remembered that Melbourne had looked like the opening of 28 Days Later for the past 2 months, and subsequently recalled that I had not worked a single minute in those 2 months. I didn't have a single friggin' doubloon to my name. But there was still some hope left. After looking around the store page some more, I navigated to the game's website where I contacted the dev team. To my surprise, they were actually willing to give me, a lowly little YouTuber of about 400 subs at the time, a copy of their game. Given that I was provided the game for free, I'm going to be as unbiased as possible in this review. I am completely objective in saying that this game is f***ing awesome. Superfly is another superhero simulator, very similar to that of the Unbreakable Gumball. One key difference though is that instead of giving you only Spider-Man's powers, you can also use the abilities of characters like Iron Man, The Flash, and Stephen Hawking apparently. But before we jump into the combat side of things, let's have a quick talk about the range of Spider-Man abilities that you have, because it's f***ing big. Starting things off, the web swinging is basically perfect. It controls fairly well and has an unmatched sense of speed. It's a perfect mixture between the more skill-based swinging of the Spider-Lair and the power fantasy of Gumball. And if webs aren't your thing, you can switch to the physics of that of a grappling hook. But your web lines are just the tip of the iceberg. Every set of powers in Superfly has 2 different abilities and 2 alternate abilities that can be switched out. For example, pressing the grip button with your Spider-Man powers will shoot out a kind of web shot, depending on which ability you enable. The default is a web bomb that you can throw at a surface, sticking cars, enemies, and all other kinds of different debris together. This is great for apprehending enemies. The alternate ability is a web taser, a kind of web shot that erupts into a cloud of electric smoke upon hitting an enemy or a surface. Someone's been playing Titanfall 2. Now for how these abilities are being used in combat. The main enemies that you'll be facing in Superfly are these flying drones that hunt you down across the city. You can use your web lines to yank them towards you, or yourself towards them. You can use your web bombs to stick them all together, and then switch to your web tasers to finish them off. You can even switch to another power set entirely, which I'll touch on soon. Outside of these drones, there's an Avengers level threat you can take on, in the form of this giant mechanical worm. That same somebody's been playing Terraria. I must say, holy shit is this boss fight fun. If you really want to change things up though, you can switch to some of the other power sets. And luckily for us, there's powers based on 2 of Spider-Man's most famous rogues. First up, we've got Doc Ock. You can take to the streets with his 4 giant metal arms, wreaking havoc as you go. One tiny thing I found really cool is how you can walk along the ground with the arms, just like Octavius is seen doing. You can grab cars and throw them, and if you're more of an anarchist, you can grind them into bits, exploding chunks of metal every which way. You can even draw swords from the hands of the arms, which prove to be fun as hell. Once you've found the precious tritium, you can switch over to the second villain's powers. Enter Electro. Your main ability here is sending out massive bolts of electricity that basically decimate everything in their path. These come in the form of a continuous beam or a precision strike that you charge up. You can also fly around with a unique movement system, thrusting you in the direction you push your hands. This is great for destroying cars and enemies with a torpedo-like motion. But what's cool about this power set is that you can use it in combination with the Spider-Man powers. Miles Morales famously has his Venom powers that function like electric blasts, so you can swing around, web up your enemies, and then finish them off with a Venom strike. All in all, this game's sheer variety of gameplay alone dethrones Gumball as the best Spider-Man VR game, at least for me. The power set is much more complete, which puts you in the shoes of Spider-Man far better. And although I think I prefer Gumball's swinging, Superfly's abilities and combat encounters far surpass that of Gumball. God, one game into this video and Gumball has already been dethroned. Even though we've already named a new king, there's 2 more games that we absolutely need to talk about. Over a year ago, and before I discovered many of the games featured in this series, I made a post on r/sidequest. In the post, I asked the community about Spider-Man games you could play on the Quest. It was here that I was originally recommended the Spider-Man WebVR game, and, well, you all know how that went. In this same thread, I was recommended a game called Swarm. It looked to contain the same sort of Spider-Man movement that I was looking for, but because the game was in early access at the time, and I didn't really feel like jumping through all the hoops to play it, I put it to the back of my mind. Now fast forward to September of this year. I put up a preview for part 1 of this series, and in the comments section, one of my frequent commenters, shout out to Josh Jenkins, you're pretty cool, recommended I talk about the game. At that point, it was too late to put it in part 1, but I was keener than ever to try it. So let me ask you a question. Do you like Spider-Man? How about guns? I like Spider-Man. I like guns. This was made for me. You know, in a world where a new piece of Spider-Man content comes out every 30 minutes it seems like, I never thought I'd see an adaptation of this single frame from Japanese Spider-Man. Swarm is a high-octane, objective-based arcade VR movement shooter. Jesus, what a title. Armed with these awesome looking guns that have grappling hooks built in, you must defeat the alien swarm that has come to invade Earth. This game is a massive change from a lot of the games I've previously covered. It's a fully feature-complete game, whereas a lot of the games I've covered are either early access or demos. This fact works to its advantage because Swarm is now my favourite VR game of all time. Let's get into why. The game starts you off in a training zone. The first thing you immediately notice is the absolutely gorgeous cel-shaded art style. The game hastily introduces all of its concepts, starting with the movement. It places you in an arena with a bunch of different grapple points littered around, and by using an interesting combination of web swinging and grapple physics, you can gracefully fling yourself around the map, which you'll want to do because touching the ground literally kills you. Next, you're shown your guns, a favourite of Spider-Man, I'm sure. Guns aren't usually all that notable in VR games, but I will say I especially love how these guns look and sound. Once you pass training, you can immediately start the campaign. In the many levels of the campaign, you're tasked with flinging yourself around the arena to evade and eliminate the droves of swarm that come your way. There's a wide variety of environments you progress through, one of my personal favourites being this desert level with the big bell thing in the middle. The main loop of the game is basically the same throughout the campaign, with the exception of these awesome boss levels that have you take on mechanical worms, among other foes. What is it with all these mechanical worms? To keep things changing, new enemies, guns, and objectives are strewn throughout each level. Enemies always have a certain gimmick to them, whether that be shields you have to get behind or bits of armor you have to destroy, and this keeps you constantly on your toes. There's a bunch of different weapons and power-ups too. I'm quite fond of this grenade launcher that you can remotely detonate. It has a big blast radius, and it's immensely satisfying to hear all your points rack up while you use it. Complete kill. This shotgun is pretty cool too. And to make sure the gameplay is always fresh, at the beginning of levels a new objective is assigned to you. Things like eliminating all swarm or killing as many as you can under a time limit. This ensures that even though you're doing the same thing gameplay-wise in most missions, you still have other objectives you need to complete. All of these pointers only add to how exhilarating this game is. Once you get into the flow state of traversal and shooting, it's just pure concentrated fun. It's a perfect game to just jump into and play whenever you want, and being an arcade game, I'm sure it was designed to be this way. It's like injecting pure fun into my veins, and being a fan of Spider-Man and a shooter game enjoyer, Swarm is an absolutely perfect game for me. That's why it's now my favourite VR game. But the question remains, is it the best Spider-Man VR game? I'm going to confidently say no, because even though Swarm is an amazing game, it offers nowhere near the level of variety Superfly does. But that's perfectly okay. In the end, Swarm will be a game that I come back to dozens of times in the future. It's an utterly unique experience that I just can't seem to get enough of. Also, Green Sky, if you're watching this, please hit me up. I want to give away a copy of this game. I just love it so much, please. Okay, so I have a bit of a confession to make. I originally planned for this segment to be talking about another game with Spider-Man combat, the name of which I'll spare mentioning. To be totally honest, I really wanted to like it, but I just couldn't. It was janky, not very well polished, and I just didn't feel a connection with it like I did Superfly and Swarm. All I'd have to say about it would be bad things, and I don't really have the heart to do that, knowing that a lot of the devs of the games I cover watch these videos. I'm a softie, okay? So instead, I'm going to review a game that you guys all vehemently suggested me to play. Well, besides this one guy who told me it sucks. I'm pretty sure every third comment on the original video is asking me to play it, and even though it does not contain combat, it's still very much worth talking about. Let us take a look at a game called The Silkworm. God, this is ugly. So, upon first glance, you can definitely tell that The Silkworm is not a game scoring high in the visual field, but something genuinely impressive hides behind these towering brown pillars that vaguely resemble buildings. Although you can't really tell, The Silkworm's game world seems to be a section of New York City replicated pretty much to scale. You can even make out St. Patrick's Cathedral and the Empire State Building, the latter of which is utterly terrifying to stand on top of. Seriously, we have to talk about this. I don't think I've ever gotten vertigo from a VR game before. I'm not really scared of heights in real life, so being on top of a tall building in VR has never really scared me either, but holy crap, I'd be lying if I said my palms didn't get sweaty standing on top of this building. I think it has something to do with the wind sound effects the devs have programmed in. When you get higher and higher up, you hear wind more aggressively in your ear, like you would in real life. I think this is what puts a literal shiver down my spine. But once I defeated my newfound fear of heights, I jumped from the building and engaged in the unique web swinging that the Silkworm offers. No other game handles web swinging quite the way it does, so let's take a look at how it does it differently. In all the other games I've covered, when you shoot out your webs, they attach to the buildings very quickly, if not instantly. In that case, the challenge leans more towards keeping yourself swinging and off the ground, but in the Silkworm, it's totally different. Your webs actually have travel time, meaning you can aim at a building and miss completely if you're not on your game. Sometimes it can take a couple seconds for your web to even reach the building you shoot it at, and if you're not careful, you're soon to kiss the pavement. This offers a fairly unique challenge over the other games in this genre, and believe me, it is a challenge. The speed of the swinging combined with the travel time of the webs definitely makes it so. Full disclosure, I absolutely suck at it, but I'm sure that if I put some more time into mastering it, it'd be pretty rewarding. On top of swinging, you also have some other Spider-Man abilities. The standard wall crawling is here, but with the addition of this cool wall slide thing you can do that I find inexplicably satisfying. You can also combine the wall crawling with web zips to scale a building in no time. One unique thing the game has to offer is how it actually handles the webs you shoot. Instead of only serving the purpose of swinging, they can also be let go of and attached to surfaces. You can even climb on them, which while not all that practical, can still be fun to play around with. With this, you can make these messed up looking web patterns that look like someone dropped a packet of spaghetti on the floor more than anything else. If you shoot enough lines out, you can even make yourself one of those rope climbing frames you probably sprained your ankle on as a kid. And that's about it for the gameplay. It's definitely more limited than other games I've covered, being a tech demo, but that doesn't take away its merits. It's certainly impressive in its own right, and I'm especially appreciative of how versatile the webs can be. Whether it be a couple people or just one guy, the Silkworm is definitely a game with potential. It offers a unique spin on web swinging mechanics that have mostly been done the same in a lot of other games. And while by itself it doesn't surpass Superfly, given the right application and a lot of work, it could definitely get within its league. Okay, I reviewed it, can you please stop asking now? God damn. Well, here we are, the part of the video where I get deep and sentimental and inspiring and stuff. You guys actually really seemed to resonate with that part of the video last time, which I'll be totally honest, I did not expect. I even got comments from some of you saying that you were moved to tears, and whether or not that actually happened is anyone's guess, but the thing I do know for sure is that I was wrong. The truth is, I was very close to cutting that sequence out. I had this feeling inside of me that it was out of place, jarring, or simply just fell flat. I ended up doubting my skills, even myself, and my integrity. In the end, I couldn't come up with anything better. Defeated and expecting comments telling me how sappy and cheap this ending was, I put the video up and went to bed. You guys loved it. You absolutely loved it. You told me how it inspired you, or reminded you why you love Spider-Man so much, but the most important thing you told me was that I never should have doubted myself in the first place. So here's today's lesson. We set out to fight like Spider-Man at the start of this video, and while we may have found something along those lines in the games we discussed, we've really had a fighter inside of us all along, just waiting to come out. Strength, courage, resilience. These are all words that we use to describe Spider-Man, but they're not exclusive to him. If we put the work in, we can all possess those traits. Have the strength to defeat your enemies, have the courage to face them in the first place, and have the resilience to get back up when they get you down. That's how you fight like Spider-Man. What's important to remember though is that sometimes there is no enemy other than ourselves. Sometimes the greatest battle lies within, and that's okay. Know your worth, know your strength, know your courage, and know that even though it might be a battle, it's always worth standing up for yourself. Fight for what matters to you, no matter what. Because even if we fall short, even if we fail, what better way is there to live? Anyone can wear the mask. You could wear the mask. So who will you be? Defeated? Or amongst the greatest? Alright, it's that time again. You guys ready? My name is Doreen. I'm a gigantic nerd, and for about 8 months now, I've been searching for the best Spider-Man VR game. In the first video, I said this game was bad and this one was good. Then in the next video, I said that game was bad again, and then said this one was good. Then absolutely nothing happened, and then there's us talking now. There you go, you're up to speed. But in those 5 months, I was researching, playing, going back on things I'd said, and murdering countless amounts of people, all in the search for the best Spider-Man VR mod. And thanks to your comments, I've found my challenges. The Blade and Sorcery Lashing mod, and the Boneworks Spider-Man mod. 2 modifications translating my dreams into VR. What they have in common is combat, like covered in Part 2, but where they differ is in their ways of execution. Join me as we discover which will reign supreme. This is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR mod. My journey began in humanity's center of intelligence and wisdom. From the moment I uploaded part 1, you guys have been suggesting games for me to play. Looking through these comments, there's certain ones that pop up more than others. There was a certain suggestion, a mod, that I saw so much it honestly annoyed me. So I did what any sane person would do and said something that I'm about to go back on. Twice. Let me just remind you that this is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR game, not the best Spider-Man VR mod. Now, trust me, I wouldn't be making this video unless I genuinely cared about this game and this mod. I've been playing it for a couple weeks now, and I can honestly say that its combat far surpasses anything covered in Part 2. The Spider-Man-ness of the combat is simply unmatched. And guess what? I ran it, and my computer didn't explode. Just in case you somehow didn't know, Boneworks is a pretty big deal in the VR space. It's one of the platform's flagship games, boasting a full-on physics system that innovates in a similar way to Half-Life 2's. With its implementation, mechanics from many different games are either automatically in or have the perfect foundations to be built upon. It's no lie that Boneworks has one of the best hand-to-hand combat systems out there, and it's the perfect stage for a spider. Being what is basically the Gary's mod of virtual reality, Boneworks has a thriving modding community. It's made up of the same galaxy brain bastards that somehow managed to put multiplayer into a single-player game. How? The place you can find all of these mods is in the Thunderstore page for the game. Here you'll be able to find all of the add-ons we'll be discussing today. The most important one though is the Spider-Man mod. This one is probably one of the most highly coveted mods on the scene. It's definitely most popular, as I'm told by its presence on the most downloaded tab on the store. After watching a video or two and then pressing some buttons, I was ready to play. Right, so you remember how I thought Boneworks was going to totally kill my computer? Well, it might not have done that exactly, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can run it well. Outside of this depressing black box environment, I mostly get terrible frame rates. At the very least, from my experience, the Spider-Man mod doesn't seem to make your performance any worse. That being said, if you do happen to have a NASA quantum computer lying around, you can also download custom maps from the Thunderstore, with plenty of city environments to boot. But enough rambling, let's get into the meatloaf and potatoes. To begin with, you can outfit yourself in a couple of Spider-Man's different looks by taking advantage of the custom player models available on the Thunderstore. One of them is even a model ripped directly from Marvel Powers United, a long-forsaken Spider-Man VR game we'll probably never get to play again. Please bring it back. Please?
Aww. Miss Brandt?
Yes.
Get me a violin.
The Spider-Man mod itself adds a fair few of Spider-Man's powers to the Boneworks sandbox. If you whip open this nifty little menu, you'll actually be able to customize all of these options too. You've also got a very much appreciated super jump. Like, it's such a simple thing, but for some reason only like 2 of the other games I've covered have it. So kudos to you devs. Another underutilized spider ability is wall crawling, which is present here. This I can see not having all that much practicality in combat, but definitely in the main campaign or just traversal in general. But the main thing we're here for is the webs, and especially how they are in combat. By double pressing the trigger or grip buttons, or any other input you opt for since you can change it, you can shoot out a web. Playing the iconic Raimi web noise, you can use these webs to swing around or for more deadly use cases. I honestly find the swinging in the Spider-Man mod to just be okay. With the Boneworks physics engine, I kind of went in with the expectation that it would be really good, but it feels kind of clunky compared to other games I've played. I think it comes down to how it controls. From the get-go, the webs feel more like grapples than pendulums, similar to Far From Home VR, but a little bit more egregious. You can't yank yourself around like in Gumball, so that doesn't help either. What this does is basically lock you into moving in the direction you were facing when you shot your web and not much else. It makes for a pretty disappointing web swinging system, at least for me. The other main function of the webs are as physics objects that can act upon other physics objects. In this case, the grapple physics can actually be pretty handy since you can pull objects towards you that are out of your force grab range. On the downside, you can't shoot them out and climb on them, like in the Silkworm for example. The area the webs succeed the most in has got to be combat. Add in your physics-enabled body, and there's no limit to the amount of ways you can dispatch hordes of Fords or null bodies. If you want to get fancy with it, you can web an enemy's face and then slam them into the ground, or even do this little jump and web thing I love doing. What I love the most has definitely got to be the hand-to-hand combat, simply for the reason that it's new after being sorely needed. While the other games had Spider-Man combat, they had you going up against some assortment of robots or flying creatures. What I really wanted to do was go head-to-head with some humanoid enemies, so I can feel like I'm clearing a room full of goons on my way to fight a supervillain. That feeling is exactly what the Boneworks Spider-Man mod gives me. All I've got to do is whip out the utility gun, spawn in some enemies, and I'm ready to serve some cold hands. But what makes it even better still is the addition of slow motion. I know it's technically a feature from the base game and not the mod, but just pretend it's Spider Sense or something. Just don't think too hard about it. God, I wish I could tell you with words how fun it is to fight these guys in slow motion. With the increased reaction time and the addition of all the other mechanics we've just covered, it makes for an absolute blast. The only complaint I really have outside of the swinging is how when you use the super strength to lift up an enemy, throwing them down causes you to fly into the air. This is likely just a little physics goof, but it can get really annoying. Other than that, the fundamentals are passable, even if the performance is bad. Once again, I didn't throw up, and that's all I care about. But before we wrap this up, I just have to mention this. If you're at all in tune with the VR scene, then you probably know that the successor to Boneworks, Bonelab, was just announced. This has sent ripples through the community because all of these amazing physics systems will be ported to the Quest 2, so that dozens of others can enjoy them. Judging by the trailer we got, it's looking like modding will be a focus of the game. My personal hope is that whoever made this mod can port it to the Quest 2 because, my god, this would be amazing untethered and at a more stable frame rate. But anyway, the Boneworks Spider-Man mod can be kind of disappointing on the web swinging front, with its controls and physics leaving something to be desired, but where its punches hit hardest is in combat, giving you a rich set of spider skills and letting you dispose of your foes in any way imaginable.
Welcome back. Fortnite is the latest video game kids can't get enough of.
You know, I'm actually quite surprised that Tracy Grimshaw hasn't lambasted this game on a current affair yet, since it's literally the most violent thing humanity has ever created. But being the secretly psychopathic baboons that we are, this game also happens to be one of the most famous VR games of all time. With dozens of videos with millions of views covering it, it's certainly made its mark on the industry. And on our now blood-soaked hands, like I literally just smell pennies talking about it. Of course, once something gets popular enough, people are going to want to see one of the most famous characters ever conceived crossover with it in some way. And it's for that reason that we're here today. Time to set aside all feelings of empathy. We're talking about Blade and Sorcery. Blade and Sorcery and Boneworks share a lot of common ground. The most obvious ground they both stand on is that the two share a fully integrated physics engine. However, where they differ is that Blade and Sorcery is set in a fantasy world where you can shoot fireballs out of your hands and stuff. In the game, you can jump into an arena of your choosing and then can spawn a variety of different melee weapons. You then let out all of the anger you've had pent up ever since they announced a Kraven solo movie instead of saving him for the college trilogy. As you can imagine, the results are particularly gruesome. If you want to get old-fashioned with it, you can just whip out your hands and beat the life out of someone. Blade and Sorcery also iterates on Boneworks with the addition of a kick button, something so simple yet so fun. Just like its competition, this game has a huge modding scene hosted on Nexus Mods. Most of the add-ons you'll find are quality of life changes, extra weapons, or the ability to Captain Carter people, but what we're interested in is the Lashing mod. Installation was pretty run-of-the-mill, just download a file, just extract the desktop, you know, blah blah blah. After jumping in and playing around with the lashes, I was surprised at just how versatile they are. To begin with, lashes can both be used in combat and for other utilities, like swinging and moving objects. The swinging is actually a lot better than I anticipated it would be. It feels really speedy, and you can switch the way they work on the fly, going from a pendulum to a grapple with a literal press of a button. The way it works is by holding the grip and trigger, you'll shoot out a lash that immediately flings you in the direction you shot it. You can then release the trigger to stop retracting the lash, switching to a pendulum mode, or continue to retract it like a grapple. If you want, you can even hold down the spell wheel button to extend the lash back out. This system is actually the most accurate Spider-Man webbing I've ever experienced so far, since we see Spider-Man retract and extend his webs like this dozens of times in the comics, shows, and movies. But though it can be fun, the maps just aren't made with web swinging in mind. I definitely recommend the map with the big bridge in the middle, since that one is the most open and probably the easiest for swinging. The only thing really holding the swinging back is how the crosshair for the webs, seen here, snaps to certain locations in the environment instead of you just being able to shoot them anywhere. This actually does come in handy with something I'll discuss in a minute, but here it makes you feel a little bit more restricted. You also don't have a super jump either. You can probably mod this in, but we're just exclusively looking at the Lashing mod today. But enough whinging. Let's talk about the cool stuff. Something this mod has in common with the Silkworm is that your webs are actual objects that stay around after you've shot them. This unlocks a bunch of possible applications. You can pull objects and weapons towards you, or web certain obstacles together or out of your way. You can sling them across gaps and then climb along them, or you could even imbue a weapon with lashing and then cut the rope, turning it into a grapple. But where all of these different applications come together is in the combat, and holy crap, is it brutal. With the power of the Lashing mod, there are so many different things you can do to get yourself on a watch list. Some of my favorites include disarming enemies, crucifying them, webbing them up to high places and watching them hang. It's like if Spider-Man was in a Netflix Marvel show. Combine your webs with the viscerally satisfying melee combat and you've got something special. Another thing that Blade and Sorcery has in common with Boneworks is the slow motion, the pseudo spider sense I was talking about. Something it does differently though is making you about as strong as Superman while you're using it. This lets you straight up send people to God physically and then again spiritually once they hit the ground. You could even use somebody's, well, body as a flail like I did here. Also, the combat is actually made easier by something I didn't like from before. The web snapping to certain things can be a total pain when swinging, but in combat it's more than welcome. It streamlines aiming so you don't have to spend so much time lining up your shots. This mod also adds in these lashing bombs that can be thrown down. After a few seconds and some satisfying sound design, everything within a 5-meter radius will get stuck together. If you want to make someone's death as painful as possible, lash them to the ground, throw some daggers around, and then throw one of these puppies down. Hey there, government agent. Listen, I promise I'm not a serial killer in the making, okay? Just don't put me within 50 meters of VRChat, and we'll all be just fine. At the end of the day, the Blade and Sorcery Lashing mod is a chock-full addition to an already existing sandbox. It offers a wide range of applications, from high-octane swinging to high body count combat, and although certain things hold it back from being a true Spider-Man experience, it offers you combat that pleases you as much as it pains your enemies. I'm going to introduce something I've never done in a Spider-Man VR hunt video before. In the past, when I've decided which is the best of any set of games I'm covering, I usually make the decision based on my personal opinion and then back it up with a little bit of reasoning. That's what I was going to do before beginning to script out this video, but after seeing how close these games are in terms of mechanics and Spider-Man offerings, I'm instead going to change it up. This time we'll be using a points system. Utilizing all of the knowledge we have about these two mods, we're going to compare them and then award them with up to 10 points in the following 5 categories. Swinging. How good is the mod's web swinging? Are you able to control it well? Combat. How diverse are the combat offerings? What does the mod introduce that complements combat? Versatility. How much can you actually do with the mod? Does the mod add anything else besides webs? Replayability. What draws you back in after an initial play? What parts of the mod aren't replayable? Fun factor. How fun is it to play? Alright, the time has finally come. It's time to decide the best Spider-Man VR mod. For its losses in the field of control and overall replication of the web-swinging fantasy, the Boneworks Spider-Man mod gets a 6 out of 10. And for its mostly masterful and intricate recreating of one of the most iconic superhero abilities, the Lashing mod gets a 9 out of 10. In what is likely the tightest category so far, the Boneworks Spider-Man mod gets a 9 for a well-done power fantasy that offers verticality and extreme strength. Meanwhile, the Lashing mod gets an 8 out of 10 for having versatile web integrations but lacking some key Spider-Man attributes. The Lashing mod slips a little bit in this category, with its somewhat surface level additions being made up for by its Silkworm-like web mechanics, earning it a 7 out of 10. The Boneworks Spider-Man mod triumphs with additions that, while lesser in quantity, are literally game-changing, earning it a 9 out of 10. Overall, the Lashing mod gives you a lot to do, but once you've actually done all of those things once or twice, they lose their flair, whereas the Boneworks mod does less, but better and more consistently. For replayability, the Boneworks mod gets an 8 out of 10, and the Lashing mod a 6. Here we are at the final category. Right now, Boneworks leads with 32 points, and Blade and Sorcery sits at 30. But the decision has to be made, and so I award the Boneworks Spider-Man mod a 7 out of 10 for fun factor. The main thing holding it back here, aside from nitpicks, is a lackluster swinging system. If it was better, it easily would have gotten a 9 out of 10. Finally, for the Lashing mod's poignant yet grating combat and expansive web swinging, I award it an 8 out of 10, placing it 1 point below its competitor, which means that the title of the best Spider-Man VR mod goes to Boneworks. I've got to admit, the main thing that won me over with the Boneworks mod was just how Spider-Man-y it is. As you obviously saw though, it was an extremely tight competition. Well done to both, but the Boneworks Spider-Man mod will now bear the crown. And that brings us to the end of our Spider-Man VR mod hunt journey. Thank you all so much for watching and for joining me today, seriously. I'm really sorry that it's taken me this long to make another mini-doc. 5 months is a long time on YouTube, and truth be told, I took that long because I was scared. Scared that whatever I put out could never match my 1 million view crown jewel. But the fact that we're here, right now, proves that you can always overcome fear. If you didn't know that before, I hope you do now. But despite that, there's still something I want to address. The Spider-Man VR Hunt Part 3. It's my most anticipated video ever, and that can be pretty scary. But I'm not afraid. I have a dream that I want to bring to life, and when you have a dream, don't ever be afraid. So stand up, true believer. You've got this. Over a year ago, I began a journey. A journey to find a game that best realized my childhood dream of becoming Spider-Man. In the time since this hunt began, we've found more and more experiences that fit the bill, but we're yet to name a definitive winner. We've spent months gathering games, and now is finally the time to decide. Join me as we finish this hunt and find the game. In this final leg of the hunt, we will cover 6 new games and demos, then rank them alongside all previous contenders to find the best. Resist, Project Demigod, and Yupitergrad. The final fighters in this contest of champions. Which game will rise to the top and seize the crown? This is the hunt for the best Spider-Man VR game. If you're looking for VR web swinging, I recommend Resist VR. Oh, you like Swarm? Try Resist. You have to try Resist on Oculus. Have you ever tried Resist? Please don't try forget about Resist. I have been resisting the urge to scream. I received so many comments telling me to check out Resist, it kind of began to get on my nerves, similar to what happened with the Boneworks mod in the last episode. But where those comments led me to never want to touch the mod at all, the unanimous insistence that I gave Resist a try actually drew me closer to it. It was around January that I took my first look into the game. I recall seeing BMS video on it where he called it Spider-Man plus Infamous. I noticed in the thumbnail that there were guns, and having just come off the narcotic that is Swarm, I knew swinging and shooting was a match made in heaven. Some months later, I visited the game in the Quest store. As the trailer played, its innate quality became apparent. Adding to that was the fact that Resist seemed to present something that no other Spider-Man VR game had before, a story. So I purchased the game. Then sat on it for about a month. I don't know why I'm like this either, I've been trying to figure it out for years. Resist is an open-world adventure taking place in Concord, a dystopian city where a corporation run by a narcissist controls everything. And get this, the metaverse is a thing. How did they get away with this? I enjoyed this story a lot more than I thought I would. The tone is well balanced with serious moments and, this.
Crypto, but I don't think I'd last long as-
And the excellent voice acting really helps sell the narrative. I got so invested in the story that when the game decided to pad its runtime by forcing me to do open-world activities, I was actually frustrated I couldn't get on with it. A Spider-Man VR game has never done that before. Now, when it comes to swinging, there's something lurking, hiding in the shadows. A feeling that I've been here before, and that's because I have. The memory arose, like a crocodile rises above water. Swing-a-Man. That is correct. This game's swinging mechanics have a shocking amount in common with Swing-a-Man, the game I coined the worst Spider-Man VR game. Thankfully, Resist is not Swing-a-Man, and so does those mechanics a lot better. Resist swinging abides by what I've come to call the golden standard for VR swinging. The standard consists of pendulum physics by default, allowing your swings to arc. Then, upon an input, the webs can be retracted like a grapple. As we discovered in the last episode, this standard is most accurate to Spider-Man, since we constantly see him retract his webs like this. The standard is put on display masterfully here. My swings were smooth and their arcs deep. The grapples complemented them by allowing me to speed myself up and stop myself from hitting the ground. The progression system offers extra abilities too, like the jetpack and pseudo spider sense slow motion. They all combine to make an exciting, best-in-class swinging system. This is what all Spider-Man VR games should aim to replicate. There are lots of customization settings that affect the swinging too, which is where you'll start to notice the Swing-a-Man similarities. Under the default settings, you have this trajectory line in front of you that is controlled by rotating your wrists. This is primarily used for sharp turns around corners. Smooth turning will rotate you along with the line so that you can manage the direction you're moving in midair. I changed these settings so that I turned my head instead of my wrist, and so smooth turning only moves the trajectory line. I found this to be a lot better in room scale, and had basically no issues going forward. The only one I did have is when I tried to scale buildings. Since Resist doesn't have wall crawling, there is a lock-on grapple instead. Sometimes it would work, and other times it wouldn't. But that's a minor bump in the road compared to the other nuggets of greatness Resist is packed with. Should you want to forego swinging entirely, the super jump ability is ridiculous. It's so overpowered you could probably use it as your only method of movement across Concord. The city isn't a boring place to be either. There are dozens of activities dotted around, many of which test your swinging skills. My favourites were these interaction puzzles, which I loved despite not fully understanding. Yeah, I am doing VCal, how'd you know? And the guns? They're basic, but pretty cool. The story mode has a variety of enemies for you to face, with the difficulty being balanced pretty well. With that and the swinging, Resist basically becomes Swarm on steroids. Where this concoction shined the most was in the final battle, where I faced this big crystal thing in the metaverse. It was so intense ducking between buildings, keeping myself off the ground, all the while trying to get hits in with my pistols and shotguns. The experience I had playing Resist was certainly worth the hype. The story, a first in this genre, was compelling and entertaining. The swinging felt perfected, and the combat, even though not Spider-Man combat, was perfectly balanced between difficulty and spectacle. Resist is putting up one hell of a fight. Tech demos have always been a part of this hunt. You could call the WebVR game one, and the Silkworm too. These demos tend to be the ones that bring new mechanics to the fray, where full games refine existing ones. So in this video, we'll be reviewing 3 new tech demos and ranking them alongside all others for the title of the best Spider-Man VR tech demo. Our first challenger is WebVR. Now I do wonder who that could be referring to. Here's what Marvel's lawyers will say should they ever see this.
What do you mean?
Upon first discovering the demo, my mind couldn't help but shoot to those terrible knockoff mobile games that attempt to skirt their Spider-Man ties. So when I opened SideQuest to check it out, my hopes weren't very high. And then I saw the guy in the video do a backflip. We all know that Spider-Man does flippy tricks and stuff. It's a staple of the character. But because of these stupid, dumb pieces of cartilage, flips aren't in a lot of Spider-Man VR games for the simple reason that doing them makes you lose your lunch. Funnily enough, Swing-a-Man also had flipping mechanics, but like everything else in that game, they sucked. Since the bar isn't that high, it isn't surprising that WebGuy flies high above it, but I think it could fly even higher. Oh god. What already soars is the swinging. The golden standard is in place with pendulum and grapple physics, and you've even got a full body, which helps with immersion. The jump button kind of sucked though, it wasn't very strong. After all of that, I tried out the flipping by pressing the A button. See, the problem with WebGuy's flips aren't the flips themselves, it's the way the game handles the direction you actually flip in. To help visualize the problem, picture this. There's a circle around your feet, and in the direction you're facing, there's an arrow. This is the way you'll flip upon hitting the button. When you smooth turn, the arrow follows the direction you're facing, and when you physically turn, it stays put. This is a problem for two reasons. One, if you're playing stationary, you're screwed, and two, in room scale, you lose track of which way you're facing very quickly. In my experience, I was never able to do a backflip whenever I wanted. Instead, I'd have to land, find which direction forward was, smooth turn back around towards the edge of the building, then jump off. Here's how I would fix this. Buff the weak jump button so that you fly up a lot higher, have the flip button lock your movement, then have the left thumbstick control the direction of the flip. This means the direction you push the stick in is the direction you'll flip. Sorry past me, gotta interrupt you there because WebGuy has actually received an update since I wrote this video, and good news, flipping has now been moved to the right thumbstick. It works perfectly if you only smooth turn, but if you physically turn, it puts the flip direction all out of whack. If you've tried it, you probably know what I mean, so the solution I just posed still stands. That's all from me, I'll let you get back to the video now. This is just one solution I came up with after playing for an hour or so. I'm sure WebGuy's developer can come up with something that will work even better. But as it is, WebGuy brings something awesome to the Spider-Man VR genre. Okay, so I have a bit of a confession to make. I originally planned for this segment to be talking about another game with Spider-Man combat, the name of which I'll spare mentioning. To be totally honest, I really wanted to like it, but I just couldn't. What game's he talking about? I'm really curious. I have played countless games for this series. Most of them have made it into the videos, but I'd be lying if I said all of them did. I'm not going to beat around the bush, since you probably have already figured it out, but the game I didn't review in part 2, the one I had nothing but negative things to say about, was Project Demigod. Now, before you sound off in the comments, which I'm sure you're going to do anyway, I want to set some things straight, so let's jump back to 2021. When I first met the game, it was called Project Meta, and yes, it was changed for the reason you're thinking. At that point, it was a simple demo exclusive to PC VR. I didn't doubt that it could take the best game title, since it was another simple demo that had done that, but upon trying it, I was disappointed. Project Meta's webs felt terrible, with my swings not even having arcs to them. The combat was rife with jank as well. I couldn't find a single thing I liked about the game, so I ended up not including it in the video. Now, back to 2022. Since you obviously weren't aware it was the game I didn't like, Project Demigod was continually name-dropped in the comments. By the time production on this video started, I hadn't played the game in around 8 months, so I figured that it would have changed. Considering it was now a renamed, paid App Lab game, I definitely had that expectation. After receiving another 30% off coupon because Meta's stock had just tanked for a third time that week, I purchased and downloaded the game. So, was it better? Project Demigod and Superfly, the current best game, share similar gameplay. Most blatantly, it and Demigod both contain power sets, granting you the powers of multiple heroes. These powers can then be taken to Millennium City, the apartment complex, the Gladiator Arena, or my personal favourite, the Training Grounds. There is one thing that sets this level apart from the others, but we'll touch on that later. In all honesty, my first impressions of Project Demigod weren't all that different from that of Project Meta. I still didn't really like the game. This whole situation might remind you of what happened in episode 1 with the Unbreakable Gumball, where I didn't initially enjoy it. But after giving it more time and thought, I came to really like it. Thankfully, the same thing has come to pass with Project Demigod, and now I think it might have the best Spider-Man VR combat ever. One of the 7 power sets on offer are, obviously, Spider-Man powers. I really appreciated how there's an in-game menu explaining how to use the powers too. You have web lines to sling, web shots to shoot, and walls to crawl. I found the crawling to work, but not be particularly compelling. The swinging was a mixed bag too. The first time I tried it, my swings still didn't have an arc to them. It was like the web was getting longer as I flung through the air. It sucked, no way around that. I had a look around in the settings and found this option that changed the behavior of the webs. When turned on, the webs act a lot like the webs in the Boneworks mod, like grapples. I turned the setting off and instantly the swinging became a lot better. Definitely not perfect, but passable nonetheless. The absence of the golden standard is definitely felt. Now, I don't doubt you'll spend most of your time in Project Demigod punching on with enemies. Can't blame you, turns out violence is pretty fun. Demigod does violence so well that it blows the standard set by the Boneworks Spider-Man mod out of the water. Enemies can be summoned into the world via this menu with a gallery of foes to face, including lots of humanoids and velociraptors. I mean, I guess this works. Fighting against these agents in particular reminded me a lot of Mr. Negative's minions from Spider-Man PS4. And for how you go about putting them down, you have a bevy of options. With the physics in place, webs are multi-purpose. Use them to pull enemies off their feet or hang them from walls. Best of all, you can do the jump takedown thing I love from the Boneworks mod, and it's better than ever here. Web shots are as useful as they've ever been as well. Used both offensively and defensively, they make for a versatile addition. But as archaic as it sounds, your main weapons are still your fists. However boring you might think that'd be, Project Demigod has some of the best hand-to-hand combat I've ever played in VR. A lot of that praise comes down to how the enemies actually attack you, since a lot of their strikes leave them open to parries. These monks, for example, use kicks a lot, so I would catch their leg mid-air and then hoist them forward, making them fall to the ground. This adds so much depth beyond timing your punches right. And that's just one thing you could do too. Different attacks and parries work better against different enemies, so there's always something new to try. The presence of slow-mo spider sense makes these counters viable as well, and any other borderline impossible thing you want to try is totally feasible since you have Spider-Man's reaction time. But even with that, there's still one more thing. You remember how I said the training grounds have something that set them apart from the other maps? Well, that thing is this. Yep, destructible environments. For some reason, the other maps in the game don't employ these destructible materials. It's probably for performance, but using them in combat adds so much gravitas to the power fantasy that it's hard to go without them. I just wish that after destroying a wall, I could pick up the fragments and use them like a flail, like the heavy attacks in Spider-Man Edge of Time. That would be just the cherry on top. Looking back on it, Project Demigod has had one hell of a character arc. Going from a game I didn't like, to a game I still didn't like, to a game that now has a fighting chance at claiming the title. Of all the games in this video, Demigod will be the one I come back to and play the most, and that puts it in pretty good stead for the final ranking. There's been an issue afflicting dozens of Spider-Man VR games, and it concerns one of Spider-Man's key abilities. Throughout my time reviewing these games, wall crawling has been a spot where many games lose face. It tends to be a slow, neck pain inducing, and impractical addition to the power set. Some games will include it and it's subpar, others do away with it for something else. But then there's the few games that attempt to innovate. One of those is Far From Home VR with its wall running. But that game has Far From Home VR's controls, so any progress is null and void. Point is, we are in desperate need of innovation in the wall crawling field, and I think these next two demos offer just that. Down the road of searching for demos, I made a pit stop at a seemingly forgotten itch.io page for something called Spideriini. The most recent comments on the page dated back to February, but they all praised the demo for one reason or another. I know there's some real tough competition in the field, but I think Spideriini is the best physics-based experience in this series, and not just out of the tech demos. The swinging has the golden standard and invokes a strange sensation. I could feel the weight my virtual body had. Of course, this weightiness is one of the main advantages of a physics system, but it felt substantially better here. I was taken aback by just how effortless the wall crawling felt. It was as fluid as the swinging and had unparalleled controls because of one tiny change. To wall crawl in other games, let's use the Spider-Lair as an example, you place your hand on the wall, press trigger, and drag yourself up. Repeat that until you reach the top and you're done. Simple, right? Mostly. If you're not 100% on the ball, you might misplace your hand and not crawl up, totally ruining the flow and making the whole thing more laborious. What Spideriini does is so obnoxiously simple that I'm surprised no other game has done it so far. Holding the trigger makes your hand sticky, for lack of a better term. You can then move your hand to the wall where it will stick and you can climb up. It probably sounds like a nothing burger of a change, but it makes such a big difference in gameplay. Doesn't fix my neck though. I think I found Spider-Man's next big villain, it's arthritis. It's a massive shame that Spideriini seems to be dead in the water. Despite being a simple demo, the physics exceed that of full games, and the changes made to wall crawling can't be found anywhere else. The itch.io page is still up, so I suppose we can hope that one day the project will be revived. If there's one genre I've slept on for years, it's platforming games. Over the course of my life, I've only ever played maybe 4 or 5, 2 of which were console ports of Spider-Man games to the DS. My disinterest in them translated to the virtual world too. Every time I would see one on the store, I would simply dismiss it as something I wouldn't be interested in. So when I saw Yupitergrad on the Quest store for the first time and saw level-based platforming, I never gave the game another thought again. I eventually reconsidered in the making of this video, and it led me to discover something I loved. Remember how I said Swarm was my favourite VR game in the last episode? Well, that was short-lived, since Yupitergrad has now pried that accolade directly from its hands. Over the course of playing it, it even began to remind me of my favourite game ever, which just so happens to be a platformer. Wow, I'm a massive liar. So it turns out I was completely wrong about what Yupitergrad actually is, since the level-based gameplay I got a glimpse of on the store is only a chunk of the whole thing. The others are the free roam gymnasium and the place I spent most of my time, the story mode. After literally being shown the ropes in the tutorial, it became apparent how flawless Yupitergrad's swinging feels. The Cosmo sticks have the golden standard, this time with the grapples being on the thumbstick. The momentum and control I had while using them was unrivaled. It provided the thrill of speed without sacrificing intuitive control in such a way that made the chaos of frictionless movement feel calculated and crafted. While progressing the campaign, I came to love one thing about Yupitergrad's design, the fact that it is a platformer, and one focused solely on movement at that. There were no enemies to defeat, pickups to collect, or audio logs I didn't care about. It was just me, my Cosmo sticks, and whatever lay between them and my destination. Boiling pipes, slicing fans, virulent flamethrowers, all overcome through movement. I appreciate the restraints so much because it would have been so easy just to throw in some random enemies to add another layer to gameplay. What Game Dust did was fully believe in their movement mechanics and mold the entire game around them. That focus on a central mechanic combined with some funny similarities called my favourite game to mind, Portal. Now hear me out because it might be difficult to see the resemblance. GLaDOS isn't a Marxist after all. I haven't written my video essay yet. Yupitergrad's story mode has you navigate a desolate facility through the use of a new and innovative technology. As you travel through this place that seems to be designed to kill you, you're accompanied by a sarcastic AI who acknowledges that she's an AI, and Spider-Man, funnily enough. Your efforts are to create Peckhole, a new fuel source General Varnikov wants you to make, and definitely not because he wants to kill everyone with it. Does this sound at all familiar? The moment the connection really clicked for me was outside the Peckhole synthesis chamber, where I heard this piece from the game's fantastic soundtrack. Like, this game has Portal's tone. It really does feel like Portal, because you got, like, the sarcastic sort of robot voice in your head, but then you got just ethereal, alien music like this, and oh, it's just such a good combination. And just like Portal, the game is the ideal length. It doesn't overstay its welcome. You can beat the whole story in less than an hour. New obstacles are introduced at a steady pace, and although some sections can get annoying, the moments of frustration are effortlessly cancelled out in the rush of the flow state. Even if the campaign isn't for you, Yupitergrad's other 2 modes probably will be. Gymnasium offers a free swinging environment that can be rejigged at your leisure. Here is the place where you can refine your technique and master the swinging. Then take it to the time attack mode and chip away at your scores. And when you're done, play some tunes on the Dictator keyboard. Patent pending.
Yeah, great.
What makes Yupitergrad special is this. Instead of taking a gamble and trying to emulate all of Spider-Man's abilities, it takes one and does it to abject mastery. Extra modes, brilliant pacing, and a high skill ceiling elevate this game above others. And even though it comparatively lacks Spider-Man abilities, what content there is done so well that it's going to earn a high spot in the rankings. One afternoon, as the sun died, I received a message. It was from a member of my Discord server who has since deleted their account. Hey, not sure if you remember, but a while back I posted on your server about a VR Spider-Man game I'm working on, and I recently uploaded it to Steam. It's not on the store yet, but you can download it if you have a key. As they described the key features, I discerned among the rest a mention of a wall running ability. Was this another possible solution to the wall crawling problem? The viewer provided me with a Steam key to the demo, so I punched it in and played. Now, being a tech demo, Under the Mask is obviously limited. Not unlike much of its competition, there are no proper textures to be found besides these hand models, which are admittedly pretty cool looking. Even though not possessing the golden standard, the swinging felt pretty good. The momentum was balanced, and I could control my trajectory fairly well. There were two things that stood out to me though, two things that made me have revelations about the Spider-Man VR genre as a whole. First off, web crosshairs are amazing and should be in every game. There aren't many games that don't have them, but when you play a game that doesn't, it becomes very noticeable. And secondly, web travel time is a good thing, but it needs to be done right. When the travel time isn't egregious, it adds an extra degree of skill to swinging that makes landing shots feel amazing.
Holy shit, I actually landed that. Let's go.
However, it can be overdone, most notably in the Silkworm, where it makes the swinging annoying, not more rewarding. But of course, the wall running feature. It is good, but not devoid of difficulties. In order to initiate a run, you have to hit the wall at a certain angle. Once you're on, you can move on it freely or jump off with extra momentum. This plays so much better than Far From Home VR's take on the idea, which feels a lot more binary. You either move up, down, left or right, unlike Under the Mask diagonal movement. Actually getting onto the wall is where it feels finicky. As said, the angle you need to hit the wall at is very precise. I let the developer know of this, and they said fixing it was in the pipeline. I also suggested that your view could be shifted while on the wall as if you were standing upright. Even if it has problems, Under the Mask does web travel time right and even poses a solution to the wall crawling problem. I would say I'm excited to see where it goes, but given that I was only given access to the game through a private key and the developer has since deleted their account, it seems like Under the Mask might be gone. Hold on, I've got another update for you. While working on this video, I managed to get back in touch with the game's developer. The project isn't actually dead, it's just on hiatus at the moment. Also, turns out the game was uploaded to GameJolt, so if you have a VR-ready PC, you can play it there. Okay, yeah, that's all I've got. Anyone can wear the mask. You could wear the mask. There we are. We have our final contenders for the titles of the best Spider-Man VR tech demo and Spider-Man VR game. But before we get into the final rankings, we must discuss what has become of the other games in the series since they were covered, for the sake of fairness. Beginning with a tragedy, it is with a heavy heart that I tell you that Spider-Man Far From Home VR has been murdered. Yeah, basically the publishing license just expired and they decided not to renew it for some reason, which kind of sucks because it was a lot of people's first Spider-Man VR game, including mine. Even more depressingly, the Unbreakable Gumball seems to be totally broken, at least on Steam. I managed to get the itch.io version working on Quest 1, since the devs have said there isn't Quest 2 support. After replaying it, I can see why I thought it was the best game back then, but compared to what I played now, it falls short. A developer actually contacted me a month or so before Part 2 came out with a dev branch of the game, which has added a lot of stuff, including flat screen compatibility, but still no working VR support. Believe it or not, Swingerman has actually had a tiny, very, very tiny redemption arc. The controls still suck and it still isn't fun, but I actually managed to get it running on my headset again. If you want to see me play it again, check out that video. The Spider-Lair has seen constant support with new suits, including the TASM 2 suit, let's go, time of day settings, web customizations, swinging physics tweaks, and a slew of other things. The people behind it are working on a new experience too, called the Ultimate Spider-Lair. It claims to be the greatest Spider-Man VR experience, which I guess I'll be the judge of. Current title holder Superfly is now on Quest and is more fun than ever. The full release adds new bosses and modes, and the swinging and gadgets still hold up. If you're looking for a superhero VR game that isn't just Spider-Man, this is probably your best bet. Swarm still rocks, and it even has multiplayer now. The hub world gives you a new, freer context to experience the awesome swinging in. And finally, the Silkworm still exists, but it hasn't been updated. The Spider-Man WebVR game also still exists. Could not get it to run on my microwave though. Now that we're up to speed, we're finally ready to rank every single tech demo and game to find the best, starting with the tech demos. You better be ready. It's all been leading to this. In last place, we have the Spider-Man WebVR game. There's no way to sugarcoat this. The controls suck, the physics feel nothing like Spider-Man, and the vibe the game gives off inspires dread for some reason. In fourth place, the Silkworm. Despite its proximity to last place, I don't hate this game. The overdone web travel time just makes it a bit annoying to play, but it looks like crap. Like actual crap. In third, Under the Mask. In contrast to the Silkworm, the web travel time here makes the already good swinging more gratifying, and the wall running, if cleaned up, would be an interesting alternative to wall crawling. In second place is WebGuy. WebGuy's flipping mechanic is so goddamn cool that it shoots it directly up to second place. If the flipping mechanic is refined, it would make for a feature every single Spider-Man VR game needs. The swinging succeeds as well, with the golden standard in place. Finally, the best Spider-Man VR tech demo is Spideriini. This demo is a masterclass in physics-based swinging. My swing's arcs are weighty and correct feeling, with the golden standard shining brighter than ever. On top, a simple change to wall crawling makes it feel as fluid as the swinging and makes me actually want to use it. Well done to Spideriini. It's sad to think that this project isn't being worked on anymore, so we'll never see it become a full game, but even still, the mechanics on show here are second to none. If you want physics-based swinging, Spideriini's your game. We have 9 games to rank today. They will each be judged according to the quality of their swinging and combat. That which is most formidable of both will bear the crown. Enough chatter. Let's finish the hunt. In last place is Swingerman. I mean, come on, we were all expecting this, right? Even though the insane performance issues have been ironed out, the swinging is still wonky as hell, none of Spider-Man's other abilities are on display, and despite being paid, this thing barely resembles a game. A void like the plague. In an earth-shattering fall from grace, once title holder the Unbreakable Gumball plummets to 8th. Upon replaying the game, which itself came with problems, Gumball just barely avoids last with the golden standard, a cool art style, and web shots. But even so, with unresponsive filling controls and comparatively bare-bones combat, Gumball loses the advantage it had in the early days of the hunt. Coming in 7th is Far From Home VR. Although not being truly accurate to the character, Far From Home VR has some decently fun movement despite its war crime controls. The wall running, if jank, saves you neck pain, and it even has limited combat in the drone missions. The city has a few things to do too, like collecting alternate suits. From here on out is where the games get pretty good. Coming in at 6 is Swarm. With unique combat, an American household worth of guns, and hyper boss battles, Swarm isn't afraid of doing something new with the Spider-Man experience. The swinging feels great inside and outside enclosed arenas, and the multiplayer mode is a rare sight in this genre. In 5th comes my new favourite VR game, Yupitergrad. This game takes the swinging sensation and hones it with the golden standard and great controls, then makes an entire campaign around it to test your skill. The feeling of being in the game's flow state under those muscle memory-like instincts is absolutely breathless. Because the swinging is so well done and is applied in such a great way, the absence of other Spider-Man mechanics does not matter. At 4th, the Spider-Lair. Like the previous game, the Spider-Lair doesn't have combat, but supplements it with plenty of other terrific features. Dozens of suits to wear, go-karts to drive, walls to paint, web customization, time of day and weather options, multiplayer. The changes to swinging have made it feel better than ever as well. The Spider-Lair is the definition of a make-your-own-fun experience, and there's plenty of fun to be found. Superfly lands in 3rd. This new-to-Quest game is another of the make-your-own-fun variety, this time giving you powers and a city to run amok in. Face Avengers-level threats, take part in street skirmishes, or simply be the menace you're made out to be. And if you're bored of that, switch to Doc Ock or Electro powers. In terms of sheer variety, Superfly takes the cake. Resist and Project Demigod, the final 2 challenges. They've done well to come this far, but only one can win. And so, my decree is this. The best Spider-Man VR game is Project Demigod. This was a very difficult decision to make. Here's the thing. Resist and Demigod have a feature they each do extremely well respectively. Resist undoubtedly has the best swinging out of every other game. The game takes the iconic Spider-Man movement and translates it with no caveats. But then there's the problem of the combat. It's nothing like Spider-Man, he doesn't use guns. That's not a knock against Resist, it's its own thing after all. It just means calling it the best Spider-Man VR game would be unfair since it lacks a key need of the title. Then we have our victor, Project Demigod. Demigod has the best replication of Spider-Man's fighting style that we have ever seen in VR. However, I gave Demigod swinging a fair bit of flack, but even so, Demigod wins for a single reason. The game is still in development. Resist is finished. The game we have now is the game we will always have, but that doesn't apply to Demigod. The game is probably being worked on as we speak, and since the combat is already perfect, it's likely the swinging will be one day too. If the golden standard was implemented, the physics tidied, and some changes made to wall crawling, I know for a fact that Demigod would be the closest I will ever come to being Spider-Man. Spider-Man. But it's never that simple, is it? Battle Glide is an open-world sandbox game that immediately calls to mind games like Superfly and current title holder Project Demigod. But with a closer look, you'll find something completely different going on behind these skyscrapers, something that I think genuinely poses a threat to Demigod's best game status, even after its official release on the Quest Store. But what is it that earns Battle Glide this flattery? Well, if you've seen my Spider-Man VR Hunt series, you'll know that I rank Spider-Man VR games based on three main pillars: web swinging and movements in general, combat, and finally, how the game replicates the Spider-Man fantasy overall. Suffice to say, Battle Glide thrashes in all of these departments, but like Project Demigod in the state I reviewed it 2 years ago, there is certainly room for improvement. Let's start with the web swinging and movement. In the final episode of The Hunt, I coined something called the golden standard for VR web swinging. The standard consists of pendulum physics by default, allowing your swings to arc. Then, upon an input, the webs can be retracted like a grapple. And as we discussed, this system is the most character accurate for Spider-Man. Unfortunately, Battle Glide doesn't have this feature, but on the positive side, it does have an array of settings you can use to mold the swinging experience to your individual playstyle. In the settings menu, we can enable acrobatics, a once rare feature in Spider-Man VR games that now seems ubiquitous. There are variables for how fast you flip and how the game decides which direction you flip in upon pressing the jump button mid-air. I kept these on medium and thumbstick mode respectively. I found that the latter option offered more control than the velocity-based setting. Now for the settings that impact web swinging, starting with Swing Height Assist, which prevents you from hitting the ground during the arc of your swing. Turn this off for an extra challenge. Rope elasticity doesn't really impact the skill required of the swinging, but it does change the physics slightly, with each increment making them bouncier. This is great for some people, but I prefer my webs taut. Finally, Swing Aim Assist changes the ferocity with which your web crosshairs lock onto the environment and enemies. I actually kept this on, albeit at the lowest setting, simply because it adds a level of effortlessness that feels natural for a superpowered hero like Spider-Man. Turning it off would increase the margin for human error. And I play these games to forget that I'm a pile of mush piloting a meat suit, not to be reminded. One thing that is different to other games in this genre, but that can't be altered by the player, is the strength of the web zips. I've discussed before how a delicate balance needs to be struck regarding how strong these are, and Battle Glide walks that line perfectly. They're strong enough to move you in a direction, but not so much that you might as well not even swing. With that being said though, gaining momentum from standing still on street level can be a bit of a pain. If we scale a building using the wall crawling, which is good but not as good as Demigod's innovative wall running, jumping off gives us enough momentum to start swinging, but you don't always want to do this. That's why I propose introducing the Web Slingshot, which is a move common in Spider-Man's flat games, but one we've never seen in VR before. This will be a perfect fix that doesn't change the balancing of the web zips, and it's just bloody fun. Now, this is going to sound kind of dumb, but if we have a look at the game's title and then the gameplay itself, there's a little bit of dissonance. The game is called Battle Glide, but yet we don't have web wings. I feel like the physics system in place is almost begging for a robust, skillful gliding system, not something like Zenith, rest in peace, or Population 1, where you just stick your arms out like an idiot and the game does everything for you. I'd love to master this mechanic just like the swinging, and threading the needle between these buildings would be awesome, in VR especially. Now, while Battle Glide might be lacking on the glide front, it's certainly not on the battle one. In fact, it's the only combat system that even remotely encroaches on Demigod's territory, despite one glaring flaw. But first, this new web zip to enemy feature comes in two varieties. The first is a one-handed zip, where you fling yourself towards the enemy. The second is a two-handed zip, and with this, the enemy comes flying towards you. Right before you collide though, the slow motion spider sense automatically kicks in, and this is where you can pull off some sick moves. One of my favorites is this face grab to body slam, it never gets old. Also, the slow motion feature, a staple of Spider-Man VR games, is available from a button press outside of this scenario as well, alongside a powers menu that, if I'm being honest, feels a little undercooked. The only one that really feels like something Spider-Man would use, outside of the slow motion and super punches, are these taser webs, which got old fairly quickly. Speaking of things Spider-Man wouldn't use, Battle Glide also has a range of firearms and melee weapons for you to access in combat. I won't complain too much about this though, partially because without them we'd probably have a lawsuit on our hands, and partially because it's genuinely fun to disarm an enemy and shoot them with their own weapon. Or the police. But we'll get to that later. Additionally, since Battle Glide is physics-based, you can use these also as regular props, meaning you can throw them at your enemies as a part of combat. Webbing some other props, like these pallets or barrels, will even put you into this never-before-seen floating state, where you can aim and fling them at your foes. This is crazy in its current form, but truthfully a little bit overpowered, so here's how I would change it. Firstly, I would replace the floating state with a slow motion jump, meaning your time in the air is limited. Right now you can just kind of float there for however long you want with no detriment to you whatsoever. In a physics-based game like this, I feel like that's a little bit immersion breaking. Before I mentioned that Battle Glide's combat has one glaring flaw, and it's a rather simple one, but without it you lose a core facet of the Spider-Man experience. Battle Glide just doesn't have hand-to-hand combat. This is a field that Project Demigod absolutely shines in. My favourite thing about that game was being able to square up with enemies and even parry their attacks. I could grab their leg as they kicked and then throw them backwards, or deflect a punch and follow up with one of my own. This is just missing in Battle Glide. From my testing, disarmed enemies won't even approach you. They'll just go searching for the nearest gun to use, even though they pose like they're about to punch on with you. As much as I love and enjoy the combat in this game, the absence of hand-to-hand combat is hugely disappointing. Secondly, I wish I could web enemies up with web shots like I can in Demigod. Spider-Man Far From Home VR handles this pretty well, that being the only thing it handles well. In that game, holding the trigger shoots a web line and tapping it shoots a web shot, which can apprehend adversaries. It's simple, easy, and so much fun. Despite my complaints, Battle Glide's combat is sensational. If there was any part of the game though that I would venture to call flawless, it'd have to be our third pillar, the fantasy replication. Battle Glide's insane gameplay scenarios put it a cut above the competition in such a way that makes it not even feel like a competition. Let's begin with this world map. The green dot is your house, where you can change the time of day. You've got day, rainy night, and two different types of golden hour. This actually makes for the most diverse range of TOD options I've seen in a Spider-Man VR game. Then we've got these red dots, which are your standard wave-based missions, taking place at these construction sites. The number of waves and enemy units can be changed, which adds a degree of nuance. But now, for the big one, these dark blue dots. These are stealth missions, and they're as cool as you think they would be. You get to lurk around this office, or this bank, silently taking out foes and zipping between perch points. It's my favourite thing to squat on a light and then web up a guy below me, hanging him from the ceiling by his feet. It's just like the stealth missions in Shattered Dimensions and the TASM 1 game, both of which I grew up playing and loving. As far as I know, this has never been done in VR before, and here it's absolutely amazing. The fun doesn't stop outside the confines of these missions though. The game's world has many randomly occurring petty crimes for you to stop. There's these roadside skirmishes between the mercs and the police, the latter of which you can choose not to help and they'll actually fight back, which is a really cool addition. In the same vein as this, you also have these hostage situations, which can sometimes backfire. But my favourite of all of these scenarios had to be the car chases, where you get to swing along the skyscrapers in pursuit of a vehicle, and bring it to a stop by any range of equally fun means. Land on the roof and disarm the gunman. Check. Smash the windshield, grab the driver and pull him out? Check. Grab the whole van, throw it into a random citizen's car, destroying both and killing everyone in the process? Check. And all the vehicles have a level of destructibility too, which is so much fun to play with. Sometimes though, your super strength can get in the way. So many times I wanted to crawl into a car through the back windshield, but found that with my crawling I'd lifted the entire car into the air and messed everything up. For this reason, I think the strength could be toned back a bit to allow for these methods. I don't need to be able to lift a post fan with one hand. With all of this in mind, hopefully you can get an idea of what I mean by Battleglide's gameplay scenarios being so great, but in case you don't, here's a needlessly complicated metaphor. Project Demigod's sandbox is huge, lots of enemies, environments, and so on. Inside the sandbox, the sand you get to play with, the swinging and combat, is the finest, highest quality sand that Bunnings had in stock. But in the end, it's just sand. You don't have any fun toys to use with it, like a molded bucket for making castles. All you can really do is move the sand around with your hands. On the contrary, Battleglide's sandbox is smaller, only one environment and a couple of enemy types. The sand inside the box is some cheaper, coarser stuff, the discounted bags at Mitre 10. But unlike in the Demigod sandbox, you have a molded bucket. You've even got a trowel and some water to help shape the sand. What I'm trying to get at is that, sure, Demigod's swinging and combat are certainly better in some ways, but without fun applications to use those mechanics in, is it truly the better game? I think it comes down to what you're looking for. I've always felt that Project Demigod is an acquired taste. For a newcomer, it definitely feels janky, unpolished sometimes, and even restrictive. It's like going from your great new car to your mate's near dead Ford Falcon. Or just any Ford for that matter. But once you start driving it, you realize why it's lasted as long as it has. There's complexity and depth to be found beyond the jank. That's not to say the Battleglide lacks depth, but I will be honest in admitting that I've replayed it less than I did Demigod. That might be due in part to some of the things I said in this video, but it exposes a dwindling level of replay value. Everything gets old after a while. I'm not still playing Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions stealth missions to this day, am I? But yet, I still love the Spider-Man VR experience, the thrill of the fight and flight. And while Battleglide's offerings in that department are really, truly great, Demigod's are just that little bit better. With all that being said though, it's a project still in development, just like Demigod. My recommendations could well be added, and some incredible things that I didn't even think to suggest as well. So is Battleglide the best Spider-Man VR game? It is damn close, but not right now. However, one day, in the near or far future, just maybe, it might be. And with that, I can finally say with absolute certainty that the title of the best Spider-Man VR game definitively, deservedly, goes to Project Demigod. If you can do that, you are Spider-Man. We began this series with a dream, to become the hero we all wish we could be. And now, after the trials and tribulations of this hunt, we're closer to that dream than ever before. We've found a game that gives us Spider-Man's power, a game that allows us to fly through the air as he does. Project Demigod is, without a doubt, the experience my younger self dreamed of one day attaining. But that kid, in that unfitting, goofy-looking costume, had another passion. And however cliche it might sound, that passion was doing what I am right now.
Hi, I'm on camera.
For as long as I've loved Spider-Man, I've been making videos. From badly recorded Let's Plays to stupid short films to loosely told Lego stories, I have always made videos, and then one day in October 2021, somebody watched. Then another, and another, until something I had made had been seen over 1 million times. Then they kept coming back, kept listening, and now we're here saying goodbye to a years-long journey. But something else I've noticed is just how much I've changed as a person over the past year. This channel actually... I began this hunt an incredibly shy and closed-off person. I could barely look people in the eye when I spoke to them. I would mute my mic in public game lobbies. But nowadays, I barely recognize that person. I'm by no means a social butterfly, but I've changed, and that's because of you. You have all given me a place to be me, and more importantly, to be heard. So don't ever underestimate the value of time, attention, listening. These are the real powers that we all have. Take them into the world and do everything you can with them, because you have the power to change yourself, other people, anything. And if there's one thing that we all know for certain, it's that with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Thank you. Bye-bye.